Adventurers assemble. In the universe of Earth's sister planet Aston, inhabited by the most dangerous creatures, a group of deportees are about to challenge the very foundations of their prison. Are you ready to join the rebellion and fight alongside werewolves, demons and vampires? Let's embark on the journey of uprising and see where this interstellar journey will take us. This is the third part of Chain of Prophecy, Aston Uprising. Thank you very much for your likes and subscriptions. You can leave your comments in the comment area. Chapter 11. After my talk with Jack, I make my way to Thad, walking as slowly as possible and dragging my feet. I did not want to do this. One of the most unique capabilities given to a tree person was a unique curse too. It was one of those things that everybody knew about and nobody asked any questions. And if you didn't know, well, then that was your loss. But you are never ever allowed to ask a tree person about it. What I was about to do was worse. I was about to ask them to do it for me. The only reason it was so bad was because for the tree person involved it was a very painful process, and if done wrong, which time has shown it has been done very frequently and has led to brain damage, and even worse, it wasn't just the pain, as the results of sharing memories varied depending on the person individual. For some it didn't even hurt much, just a sharp prick. For others it was a whole load of pain and writhing around for a few hours in complete agony. For others it was worse. It was reliving all the memories you didn't want, very painful, embarrassing, distressing memory that has ever occurred in your life all at once. I'm not even sure if Thad knew what his type of pain would be if he shared a memory with me. Many didn't know if they hadn't done it before, which was rather obvious. It was the same with food. You won't know you like it until you've tried it. However, it probably won't leave you brain dead. It may put you in a coma if you're deadly allergic to it, but that's another story. I digress. Probably because I'm ridiculously nervous, even though I have little to be nervous about. This was that he was cool, he'd understand somewhat and let me do it. It might take a while convincing him, but really that was only natural. I've reached the entrance to the wing and take a deep breath. I can do this. It was a small task, very small. Just talking, really. I knew how to talk right. I did it every day. I was pretty fluent. If I do say so myself. Snap out of it, idiot. I forced myself to power walk into the wing and towards Thad, knowing that if I didn't I would chicken out and run in the other direction. I would do this. I tentatively knocked on his door, half hoping that he wasn't in and half hoping that he was, so that I could get this over and done with, then move on and quite possibly act like this didn't happen. Come in. He calls somewhat cheerfully. That's good, right? That he's cheerful, he's in a good mood. At least this reduces the chances of him throwing things at me. Hey Thad. I give him a small smile as I enter and sit opposite him. What can I do for you today, Anna? I take a big calming breath before I reply. Just hear me out, okay? I know this is really inconsiderate of me to ask, and please don't feel like you have to do this. You can totally say no. I wouldn't blame you at all. And please don't be offended either. I mean it in a nice way, kind of. And just say it, Anna. He interrupts, amusement lacing his tone. I need your memories, okay? I need to see that pixie you were arguing with a few weeks ago. Sure, what, you don't want me to say yes? I do. I backtrack quickly, not wanting him to say no. I thought you'd say no. Why would I? Isn't it supposedly really painful or something? Only if you force someone to do it. If done willingly, it feels like a small prick. Oh, was the only thing I could say. I had gotten it all wrong, and in reality I had nothing to worry about, even though it did make a 10-minute journey a half an hour one instead. Here, hold my hand, he says, and takes my hand anyway. I'll show you the pixie. As soon as I touched his hand, I saw this room, the very one we were sitting in now, with the difference that I was seeing things from Thad's point of view, and before me was a very irritating yet very plain-looking pixie. Not to say she wasn't beautiful, just that it looked like she was deliberately making herself look plain. She wore ripped jeans and a baggy shirt which probably hid her wings. Only the Fae could protract and retract their wings, if they had any, that is. I was more than a little shocked to see the purple splotches around her eyes, the greeny blue marks littered across her arms, and the nasty red gash running along her collarbone to her neck. She looked gaunt, with her sunken cheeks and almost hollow eyes. She looked like she was more than exhausted and looked in dire need of food. I felt sorry for her almost. You could tell whatever she was doing, it was out of force. One thing was for certain. This was definitely the pixie that I had seen in my dream. She wasn't here for very long, but in which wing would she be put when she stayed? I let go of Thad's hand, having my answer and even more questions. This was frustrating. The sooner this mystery was solved, the sooner we can get off this planet. Did the pixie stay with you, Thad, in this wing? No. She stayed with the Fae, thankfully. Otherwise, I would have done something I'd regret. Well, thanks for the help, Thad, he nods in reply, going back to whatever he was doing before I interrupted. I head towards the Fae's wing, in hope that whatever room the pixie used would still be empty and I could potentially get some clues or something that will help me figure out this prophecy. I knew Damon would let me do whatever wanted to do so after finding out he was busy. I asked one of his assistants to show me where the pixie stayed. I had been practically everywhere in this wing, but even still, wherever this Fae was taking me now, I have never been before and was certain I'd get lost on my way back. It was a maze within a maze, and after turning the 100th corner, he opened a door and let me through. He clicks his fingers and the bulb switches on. It was a threadbare room, a small bed in one corner, sheets rumpled, an equally small table set in the other corner, and a waste bin. I didn't see any clothes anywhere, even behind the door. No personal belongings of any kind. There wasn't even any rubbish in the bin. The only sign that this room had been used were the sheets. There were a few papers on the table. I went closer to see what they were. I sat on the bed flicking through the papers. They were written in very small writing, which was barely legible. Squinting, I read the contents of the page. It made no sense whatsoever. Some of it was about Earth and events that had happened in their history, and some was information about 𝐊𝐲𝐬, seemingly general knowledge information. Except there was nothing general knowledge about Aston. Sure, everyone knew it exists, but we haven't had new inmates in over 10 years, so it wasn't that well known anymore. People were forgetting about us, which was understandable, really. We were the most deeply buried under the rug problem ever known. What could be more hidden than a jail on another planet? Just as I was about to dismiss the papers, which proved that this pixie was more than just any ordinary pixie, who clearly knew her facts about Earth and 𝐊𝐲𝐬, I saw scrawled in right at the end the Earth King's legend. It made sense that this could be the same legend that Felix had told me. It certainly sounded the same, which was something. And now that I had a name to go by, maybe I could narrow my search down a little and reread the legend to see what else I could find out. The papers made one thing apparent. The pixie was here for a purpose. Be that bad or good, I don't know just yet. I made my out of the room, intending to take the papers with me, as I doubt she was going to come back to take them herself. The door was still opened. I hadn't bothered to shut it. I didn't care that people were going to see me. The important people already knew that I was here, and really that was all that mattered. As I attempted to walk through the door, as is the correct usage of a door, I found that I couldn't. It just wouldn't happen. I actually physically couldn't get through slowly. I felt the air around the door until my fingers hit something. Whatever it was, it ran across the length and breadth of the door, trapping me in. Felt like a force field, but in actuality it could be many things. The first one that sprung to mind would be a hex. But how would a pixie know how to cast a hex? If it was a hex, then I've just walked into a trap, which could mean that I'd be stuck in here for any amount of time. A year, even the rest of my life maybe. If it wasn't a hex, it could be an illusion. And if it was an illusion, then maybe I could break out of it. But nothing was scary, really. I wasn't afraid of being in this room alone, with the potential of not getting out of here, because I knew that somehow I would get out of here. Even if that meant Jack saving my ass again. Now I would be slightly more afraid if the room started doing something. Say, for example, the walls started closing in, or I shouldn't have thought that, as now the walls have really started closing in. It was only a fraction, but I felt it with everything I have. But alas, I couldn't feed the fear. This could still not be an illusion. The walls stopped moving. This could easily be a hex. But how do you break a hex? I knew how to break an illusion, but with that there are the risks that I wouldn't make it out alive. The walls started moving again. I really needed to start controlling my thoughts. This was not an illusion. It was a hex that I could break somehow. Even though stop, you can, and we'll do this step 1. Wait, I don't have a step 1. Maybe I should try slowly leaving the room instead of all at once. If the hex was programmed to be whatever I think it is, say an illusion or whatever else kind of curse there is out there, then in theory I can do the opposite too. I can use this to my advantage. If I started with a small part of my body going through the hex at a time, then the hex will eventually accommodate me and allow me to go through. As usually, small beings, say a mouse, were able to come into and out of a hex illusion, whatever this was. If I could use this threshold against me, I can push it to its limits until it snaps and breaks the illusion, or until it snaps and breaks me, either way. Really, but we have to be confident here. Positive thinking. Shall I start with my finger? No. That's too small. I'll start with my foot. Inching my way towards the invisible barrier, I feel my foot hitting it and slowly push through. To my delight, my toes manage to get through. Very slowly, I continue pushing through the barrier at a snail's pace. In order to accommodate the fact that I needed the barrier to be broken pretty soon, as my legs and torso would have to fit in pretty soon, I also added my fist and began inching my arm through too. I could feel the hex stretching, if that's the word, around my hand. This was different. It was more protesting against my hand's intrusion. I continued at a steady pace, pushing my wrist, then my arm. My calf was nearly all on the other side. I was definitely getting somewhere now. I pushed in harder this time, more of both my arm and my leg, and I felt the hex protesting against the extra weight it had to accommodate. It stretched nonetheless, but this is pain stretching, as if it was being pushed to its limits now. So I did it again. Feeling the hex tighten intolerably against both my arm and my thigh, I resisted the urge to scream, but failed instead, ending up with a strangled grunt. Don't panic. That's the last thing you need right now. Deep breaths. Breathe through the pain. Easily said than done, that was for sure. In spite of the pain, I pushed again, as hard as I could physically muster. And the hex stretched again painfully so around me. Unrelenting, I pushed again harder, as my arm went through and my shoulder was next. Again the hex strained against the extra weight, but I carried on pushing. This was the only way I could do this without feeling too much pain. If I allowed the hex to adjust to the extra load, it wouldn't break. It would attempt to squish me. I could feel myself getting tired. My muscles ached, and yet I still had to keep going. I had to get through. I gave one last push into the hex, and I felt as if I was battling against an ogre, trying to get him to move, submerging myself wholly into the hex, trying to break free onto the other side. It was a surreal experience all in all, as if I was drowning and couldn't get out of the ocean. I couldn't think like that. Even though I was tired and felt so drained, I knew that this was a mental ordeal just as much as a physical one. Whoever hexed this room was very powerful, and clearly did not intend that I would survive this. I thought of Jack, of how I wanted to be free on Earth with him, of how much I wanted to do new things and see new things with him, and of Layla and Damon, how much I wanted to see their cute fae babies and be a godmother. I wanted to be free and see the sun for the first time. I wanted to feel the wind in my hair and the rain on my face. I wanted to see the world, with all its creatures and amazing beauty. I wanted all of these things, and some hex was not going to stop me from getting them. So with this push, I gave it my all. The thoughts of freedom running through my head, the thoughts of finally seeing what I've been reading about all these years, the thoughts of finally being able to do what I wanted when I wanted, and even, potentially finally meeting people of my own race. It would be amazing. I fell through to the other side, hitting the floor with a thud. Taking a moment to recover, I sit there on the floor trying to control my breathing. I look back at the door I've just escaped from, only I see nothing but the bare wall, like the room never existed in the first place. I remember being physically in that room. It was real. Was the whole room an illusion? It would be a very powerful illusion then, and aren't illusions normally only to do with on person? What about the fae that led me here? My head was already hurting, but now it hurt even more with all these questions swarming in my mind. Carefully, I stand again and take a few steps unsteadily to slowly hobble my way out of this maze. Whenever I saw a fae, I'd ask for directions, and eventually I get out of the fae wing. I was really tired, but I wanted to look into the details of that papers I had found even more, which, thankfully, I had folded and stuffed in the back pocket of my jeans. I hobbled towards the kitchen in need of a hot, creamy coffee, but as I passed the various aromas of roast chicken, my stomach growls. As much as I wanted to find out what the hex was all about, I could barely think. I take a portion and scarf it down, remembering that I hadn't even had lunch today. After my second serving and a mug full of coffee, I felt somewhat renewed and made my way to library where I could research in peace. I strolled towards the library, noticing the subtle differences between everyone now that we all had a plan to escape. I took my time knowing that I was hopefully, in less than a few weeks, going to get out of this place once and for all. As I was walking down the corridor towards the library, I heard footsteps. Lots of them, and they were running towards my direction. Very quickly. Why would they be running? From a library? Did the monsters from the books come alive or something? Libraries were the most harmless places to be unless there was a fire, someone screamed, as I finally see the running stampede. I too, in order to avoid being trampled over, head back from where I come from. It was such an odd occurrence, it never happened. Fire was something I had read about rather than seen. I really wanted to turn back around simply so that I can see the fire for myself. But I couldn't do that, mainly because the guards were trying to control the fire and had pushed all of us away from it as far as possible so that they could cordon it off. I made it back to my room exhausted, knowing that now I won't be able to find out more about the legend. I felt numb, disheartened by the knowledge that not only will I be letting everyone down, but I won't be able to prove myself to them. I know many of them don't see it that way, that I am weaker because biologically I don't have many strengths. But I do. I know I'm a hindrance, and this damn library burning down was not helping me prove my worth to anyone. I don't bother showering or changing clothes. The stress of the day becomes too much and I slowly drift off to sleep in bed. All too soon I am shaken awake by someone and am pretty much dragged out of bed, shoved into the bathroom with the order that I should make myself look more alive and come out. Once I'd washed my face, I left the bathroom ready to give hell to whoever thought it was appropriate to come to wake me up whilst for once I was having a perfectly good sleep. Instead I saw Jack, who looked more than stressed already without me adding to his problems. As soon as he saw me, he enveloped me in a hug. I was so relieved when I found out you were okay and asleep instead of in the library. He murmurs into my ear. We hug for a while. I take comfort in the fact that I have him, always looking out for me. Which might sound like I'm dependent on him or something, but in reality it was just the comfort you get from knowing that whatever happens, you that one person always in your corner. Jack was a good person to have come on, he says, pulling away. We have to get to the meeting. He places a soft kiss on my forehead and gently tugs me out of the door. I was both nervous and apprehensive about this meeting. It could go good or bad. I already knew that I had bad news, but what about the others? I could only hope that their objectives were fulfilled better than mine. I guess there is only one way to find out. TR12. The meeting was to be held in the werewolf wing, as that was the one wing that could accommodate a large amount of people in on space comfortably, and which would give us some forewarning if we were to get caught. Everyone else had already gathered when we reached the meeting. There were noticeably more people here than the first meeting. I'm hoping that this is because we've made some advancements. Jack goes straight to the middle while I sit down near Max, Jack's second in command. I know that losing the library was a hindrance, but I know that we can still get through this. We can still get out of here. Any updates? The leader to the magicians, witches and warlocks alike motions to one of his men to stand and speak. We, my fellow magicians, and I have found that there was a great increase in magic all throughout the day. In fact, ever since the pixie arrived it has been steadily increasing, but today it peaked. Never has there been as much magic on 𝐊𝐲𝐷 today than any other day. We found something similar, another girl states. Coming from the werewolves this time. We found that 𝐊𝐲𝐷's barrier is weakening. It has always been there ever since the creation of the prison, in order to keep inmates isolated and to prevent escape either from the inside out or from outside forces. That's why we only ever see black or yellow when we look up. It's all fake. If 𝐊𝐷's barrier is weakening, that means that this whole prison is weakening and someone or something is making that happen. Is there any possibility that the royals back on Earth know this and have used this as a catalyst to get us out of here earlier? Hence changing the rules? Jack asks, brows furrowed. Certainly. We've been keeping records. They could be too. I think that's why the levels of magic have increased too, but we don't know what's behind the increase. Thank you. Join forces and find out the cause behind the barrier and the magic increase. Anybody else have anything to share? We managed to get into the guards' quarters and intercepted their orders of how we're to evacuate. Here's the thing, although the plans are very sketchy, it clearly shows that there won't be enough space for everyone. There are aircrafts coming, but not enough to accommodate both the guards and us. I think they plan to leave some of us out and a few of the guards. Damon states, rendering us all into silence. This changed the game completely. It was already loads of pressure, but now, even more so. None of us wanted either ourselves or anybody that we knew to be left behind. We were all one big extended family. Slight dysfunctional, but nobody was perfect, right? Jack says calmly. I can almost hear the cogs of his mind turning, thinking of a solution. It's good to know what their plan is. Keep an eye on them, Damon. They might change for better or worse. Meanwhile, we'll need everyone to think of ways to get off this planet as well as how to get out. We can use the weakening barrier to our advantage, but I'd like to know what we're facing too. We can't lose our cool on knowing that they were willing to leave some of us here. We've just got to keep pushing onwards and fighting for a way out of here. They aren't going to win, we are. We're going to finally get out of this damn prison and off this planet. We have plenty of time left to figure things out. Make a plan and stick to it. Anything we do in haste will only lead to our downfall. Right now we have the aces in our hand. Let's keep it that way. I nod and follow Jack out as he walks away from the circle. I never took him for a motivational speech kind of guy. It makes sense seeing as he's a very good leader. I guess they come hand in hand. As soon as we get to my room, Jack flops onto my bed, exhausted. Seeing him like this after being so seemingly enthusiastic and in control was weird, but I like that I got to see this side of him. I lay down next to him, also exhausted. I snuggle into him further, just wanting to fall into the same blissful sleep that I was awoken from a few hours ago. I lay my head on his chest and think about everything that I've been through today. After the day I've had, I don't feel like telling him all about it. I feel like I should allow sleep to wash away all my stress. The other part of me feels like I should tell him there is so much to think about. So much that has happened today that he needed to know. My indecisiveness was getting me nowhere. All I was doing was giving myself a headache. It had been a few moments now that we were lying in silence together, but I liked it. I like that you can have silence with somebody and it didn't feel like I had to fill the void with meaningless, useless words. This silence was comforting. It wrapped me in a blanket and lulled me to sleep. It looks like Jack feels the same way, because at that moment he too said, I know we need to talk, but right now I can't concentrate. Tomorrow. Then he placed a kiss on my forehead and shuffles so that my head is on his chest. My guess is that after such a long day, and after all the news that we have received from the meeting, our brains have turned into mush. For now, sleep with was the only cure. I'm not sure what time it was when I woke up, but if it was possible, I felt even worse than I had yesterday night. Even more exhausted. This time I didn't even have any dreams, which was pleasantly surprising, but of no use if my sleep didn't restore me. I was also pleasantly surprised to see Jack still sleeping beside me. He wasn't usually one to sleep in, normally waking up before I did. I lay in bed for a little while longer thinking about yesterday until my stomach rumbled. Not wanting to wake up, I decide that today I was going to treat Jack. I slowly slither from his embrace and creep out the door and make my way to the kitchen quickly, lest Jack find out that I've gone and ruin his surprise. I'm making his favorite breakfast pancakes with fruit salad, orange juice, all in 3 cheese and bacon omelet. I know he's going to eat most of the food, so I ensure to make extra so that we can both eat together. Carefully taking baby steps, I carry the tray of food back to my room, hoping that he hasn't woken up yet. Ensuring that I make no noise, that I place the tray onto my bedside cabinet and gently shake him awake. Waking Jack up is like waking a bear up. It is beyond ridiculous and incredibly difficult. Not that I have ever woken a bear up, but I presume that it would simply be a very difficult task, with the whole being a ferocious bear and that, all teeth and claws. Even though Jack doesn't have the claws or the teeth, well, his demon form might, but I've never seen that. Brain, why are you dithering again? I decide that I should just jump on top of him. Sure, he might be very irritated and not talk to me for the rest of the day, but the breakfast I made, that should remedy that. Jack, I say loudly, because shouting might be a bit inappropriate. Then proceed to throw myself at him, only to land on the mattress instead, as Jack, with demon hearing and demon powers, has already moved out the way, only for me to land on the mattress instead, with him hovering over me. Do you think I didn't notice when you left? You walk like an elephant, hey? No, I don't. I have way more grace than an elephant, I say, and turn my head away from him, offended. I know, he says softly. What have you bought me? He murmurs, rubbing his nose against mine. All your favorites. I smile up at him, knowing he was only teasing him. They smell delicious. He places a light kiss on my forehead and moves off me, reaching for the tray of food. We eat in a companionable silence, enjoying the food and each other's company. The fact that our future was so uncertain, that everything we had ever known, everyone that we had ever known hung in the balance as precariously as it did of late made these kind of moments all the more precious, all the more treasured. I was one hella lucky girl to have everyone I had today and now. After we had eaten, got changed and our brains were back to functioning again. So we finally had a chance to talk about what I had found and been through yesterday. Jack, don't get mad now, I know to get mad. What did you do? My job, that's it, I promise. I plead, knowing this was already getting off to a bad start. The last thing I wanted right now was Jack throwing me off this prophecy investigation, which is more than likely once he finds out that I've already been in some sort of danger. I'll be the judge then. Let's see if my temper is justified or not. Well, yesterday I went to see Thad, who helped me confirm that the pixie I saw in my dream was the same pixie that came here. I then went to the Fae and asked to see her room. When I got to her room, I found some pretty useful notes which I pocketed and then tried to leave. It was only once I was leaving that I saw the room that I was in was hexed, but it was a weird kind of hex. Like adapted. I've never heard of a hex doing that before. But I got out with the note, so it's cool. I was going to search something up in the library, but when I got there it was on fire and the guards cordoned it off. And another thing, I exclaim in a bid to postpone the storm I can see in his eyes. Once I was free and unscathed, I looked at her room again, but I couldn't see it. It was gone, like it never existed. That doesn't reassure me at all. I want you to talk to Warren. Let's see these papers, then. Wait, you're not mad? I say as I look for the jeans I was wearing yesterday and root around in my pockets for the paper. No, I'm quite impressed, actually, it's reassuring. He says with a tight smile. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm sure it was here. All I have is this. I pull out my hand only to find black dust. TR13. Dust? Jack asks, examining the ashes. Why do you have dust in your pocket? I don't know. I reply, exasperated. He's been asking me the same question for at least an hour now, and it's really getting on my nerves. But it's dust and it was in your pocket. How do you not know? Jack, I'm going to Warren by. I grayed out before leaving as fast as I could. He's never been this annoying before. I enter the magician's wing seeking Warren. I know he'd be here somewhere in the hubbub of people, but I wanted to speak to him about what happened alone. The less people that knew, the better, especially when I didn't know what was happening myself. Instead of finding him, he found me, which was what usually happened. He leads me straight to his private meeting room. I had a feeling you would come to talk to me, he says as he flops into a chair. I have some questions. Go ahead. He summons some drink and snacks with a wave of his hand. Can a hex be more than a hex? I ask, fully aware that my questions is more than a little vague. What do you mean? Like, it's a hex, but when I thought of it as an illusion, it became an illusion, and the fear that I thought of it, well, it turned into that too. Did you think of it as a spell or anything else? Nope, I don't really know much about magic. And those were the only two that came to mind. So how did you get out of the hex? And where do you encounter it? I used the hex threshold, after presuming there was one, against itself, and managed to get out. When I looked back, there was nothing there, and no sign of the room ever being there. Plus, some papers I had put into my pocket before weren't there anymore. It was just dust. Well, that would certainly take a whole lot of power. What you've just described is very rare. It's called the changeling. You lure your prey with a scenario they'd want, and then once they're in, they use your thoughts against you. So, essentially, the only way you got out was because you thought you could. There is no escaping a changeling. If you had thought the hex had a time limit, it would have done that too. You could have stayed in that room forever, slowly disappearing into nothingness, as the hex used would have your life essence to fuel it, and nobody would have ever found you. When you stepped into that hex, you got transported somewhere else. I'm really worried about you now, Anna. Clearly something bad is happening, and I have no idea what or who is behind it. Don't tell Jack, I say immediately, knowing that he would take this hex against me personally. For now, I won't say anything, as there's not much we can do right now. But you need to be wary. I'm going to teach you more about magic and what you can do to protect yourself. It would explain the magic surge yesterday, but not the overall buildup of magic we've been having these past few months. I nod, not really knowing what to say. Partially glad that we've decided not to tell Jack for now, and even though I still felt like I knew nothing, I still felt like I was on the way to something. that we were still making progress, and that itself was reassuring enough for now. Just as I was about to leave, I remember the whole reason I come here in the first place. Why was there dust in my pocket? Did the paper stay in the room when I left it? My best guess would be that the dust was the papers you put in your pocket, and since the room was an illusion, they couldn't be sustained outside of the room and disintegrated. The dust will evaporate in enough time to. I nod, mumble my thanks, and leave, wondering what exactly I was to do now. Where would I go from now? I had hit the proverbial brick wall, and all I wanted to do was bang my head on it out of frustration. Angst rose in me, the angst of not being able to give as much as I was going to be taking. It seemed like everyone was making progress but me. The last thing I wanted to do was talk to anyone. I wanted a solution to this mess, and I wanted the solution yesterday. I was never a patient person, but somehow this was really taking the biscuit, and I don't like sharing biscuits. I find myself walking towards the library, until I remember it was still cordoned off from the fire, and sigh. The library was the one place other than my room that I could find solace in. Hold on, that wasn't strictly true. There was this one meadow, a little hard to reach, but it wasn't too much of a trek away. In the tree wing, I changed course immediately, feeling antsy enough to power walk all the way there. Very few people knew of its existence, thankfully. Otherwise, I'd never had the chance to be here alone, ever. I leaned against my favorite tree and settled there, my thoughts wandering to all the crazy things that have been happening lately. The last thing I wanted to do was to think of all the ways I had failed everybody, but alas, my brain has ever had other ideas. Rubbing my aching temples in an attempt to soothe them, I take a deep, calming breath, wanting to be anywhere but in this situation. I squeeze my eyes shut, hoping for some relief from everything. The pain, the pressure, just everything. I felt myself drifting somewhere, despite knowing that I wasn't actually physically going anywhere. I continued floating through blackness, almost as though I was floating through time itself, until I saw a small window of light in the distance, which piqued my curiosity enough to make me want to go closer. I needn't have worried. Whatever force was moving me clearly wanted me to see whatever was through the window. As we drew closer, I reveled in the sense of weightlessness that I was currently in the state of. I loved it. No worries, no impending doom, no uncertainties about the future, nothing. Even though this was a dream, I'd love to feel the wind through my hair, the slight chill of the night biting my cheeks and nose. It would be so amazing. All too soon my journey ends as I float straight through the window and hover in what appears to be a child's bedroom. Odd was not the word at the moment. I heard the muffled sob of somebody and footsteps drawing closer, fighting down my irrational panic of being seen. I stay put, waiting for whoever was going to come through those doors. I glance around the room. It was quite grand for a child's bedroom, making me think the parents of this child were rich. Two people entered the room. A man who was comforting a woman, presumably his wife. They stop abruptly a few steps into the room, and she looks at it as if she has never seen it before, drinking in every detail, even though surely she must be acquainted with everything in here anyway. She walks towards the bed and picks up the teddy laying in the middle. As soon as she has it in her hands, she picks it up and inhaled deeply, as if trying to find some scent to it. It's fading. She mumbles into the teddy, the scent's fading. She cries as the man sits beside her. I feel like we're losing them, Alfred. I didn't know what had happened to her children, but I hope she got them back. Even the man had to wipe a few tears of his own away. It's not the most pleasant thing to witness to people mourn the loss of their children, or anyone really. So when her sniffles had stopped, I was more than a little relieved. With a great sigh, she places the teddy back and regains her composure. Taking the man's hand in hers and squeezing, she says, "They'll be 16 soon." Flashing a watery smile his way, they walk hand in hand out of the room, as if she hadn't been crying a moment ago. Tier 14. A sense of despondency hits me like a freight train as I feel as if I'm being hurtled back to 𝐊𝐢𝐳 again, my body flying through space to get there. Waking up with a start, I study my surroundings. Night has fallen whilst I was asleep. I sigh. An emptiness I am all too familiar with clawing at my heart. If there was one thing I was able to do more than anything in the world right now, it was completely understand what the parents in my dream were talking about. Death was one thing. Not knowing what your loved one was doing or where they were was another. It was a different type of pain. If you knew you had parents and they had passed away, sure, you missed them like hell, but you'd know that that's what happened. However, If you were in my boat, the great unknown, then you were forever wondering if you had a family. Siblings, what they were like. Why they deemed it necessary for putting you on another planet that doubled up as a prison for some of the most dangerous individuals. That's definitely a killer, alright? Not for the first time in my life was I sucked into that abyss again. The great unknown. Lost in the emptiness that, while remained temporarily forgotten about sometimes, was such a thing that would never go away completely. I knew from past experience that this descent was one which led to wallowing and lots of self-pity, and was currently too far gone to have the willpower to get myself out again. I lay down on the grass lifeless, staring into the ever darker sky. I could feel the air getting colder, and yet I couldn't care less. I laid there getting colder, as I relived all the moments I had yearned for a family I didn't have. How everyone seemed to be fitting in just fine and I was forever alone. I squeezed my eyes shut against the torrent of emotions that just kept coming. And then it happened. One moment I was laying in that garden feeling sorry for myself, and the next I was in somewhere, neck deep in water, struggling to keep afloat, struggling to breathe, the water steadily increasing, to the point where I was more than frantically kicking myself, arms flailing against this crazily rising water just for a small gulp of air. I could feel my feet being dragged down, my arms and legs burning from the exertion. My body was giving up. I'm not entirely sure how long I was fighting against the water, but it seemed like years. Too long. I knew that rest would await me after. If I just let go, I would be at peace. Hakuna Matata, I saw somewhere. No worries for the rest of my days. I saw a light, leading to an unknown destination. A bright white light, blinding almost, piercing my eyes. Hang on a second, wasn't I drowning? What's going on? I find myself waking up in my room. It appears as I knew no other bed that felt as amazing as mine did. I try and fail at opening my eyes. Seem like they don't want to cooperate. Next I try my hands. A small wave just to catch the attention of anybody around me. Nope, also not happening. Thanks, body. I knew I could rely on you. Hello, I attempt to say. Only I can just about say the H, and even then I sound like frog. Sure, it's okay, you need to rest. A voice that was not Jack said, familiar, yet not Jack, which only served to make me wonder all the more why Jack was not here. Because as needy as that sounds, it was pretty rational when Jack was always here whenever something happened to me. The additional bonus was that I'd feel safe with him around too. I knew that he had my back. And it also meant that something very bad must have happened for him to not have come to be here. Or maybe I am just being needy and overthinking everything. As in reality, his being in charge of breaking out of a prison that is supposedly unbreakable, which is what they say about all prisons, I'm sure, and is thus very busy as a result. With these thoughts rambling through my head, I drift off, only to feel someone place my hand in theirs. Jack was here. With the comfort of his presence, I drift off back to sleep again, which was blissfully dreamless for once. Once awake, I was energized, ready to face that godforsaken prophecy again and attempt to crack whatever code to find it. With that in mind, I sit up on my bed and stretch. The kind of stretching you do when you're about to work out, which leads me to wonder how long I've been passed out for. I was currently alone in my room, which allowed me some privacy before facing the onslaught of questions, which, let's face it, I had no answers to. I continue stretching, striking ballet poses all the way to the bathroom. For some reason, I felt the dire need for some major exercise today. My muscles felt like mashed potato. I wanted to feel the soreness after a good workout. The ache whenever you moved in a certain position felt like exactly what the doctor ordered. And who knew? It might even help me clear my mind a little after a quick body rinse. Does wet hair when you're doing jumping jacks? No thanks, hair is annoying enough dry, let alone when it slaps you in the face in the middle of some yoga pose. I change into my workout gear, leggings, tank top and trainers. The last thing on my mind right now is food, but I pick up some juice and water bottles to keep me going. In the Werewolf wing they have a gym, so I head there, only stopping to let the beta know that I was using it. I start off with a small incline at a slow pace, intending to build it up. The stereo was cranking out some song that I've never heard of before, but it had a good beat, so I kept it on. I tried to keep my mind as blank as possible, and when you're trying not to think of anything, you end up thinking about everything, so instead, I imagined I was running on the beach with the sun shining down on me, a slight breeze keeping me cool, my headphones blocking everyone out, I have no idea how long I'd been running for, but when Jack found me I was pretty sweaty and was only just on the verge of getting tired. Despite this, I wanted more. I wanted to do some yoga and some dancing and some weight training. I felt like waking up my body from the inside out by ensuring that every muscle had a sore ache to it. Jack, however, had other plans. Plans that involved talking about how we were going to escape, which in the grand scale of things superseded my plans by eons reluctantly. I allow him to lead us out of the gym and into the vampire chamber, which annoys me to no end, as I'm sure he said I was allowed a quick shower and change. I didn't have to be told how bad my smell was. I knew as soon as I came within a 50-foot radius of them, they'll be able to smell my stink. The meeting was always switched up, so having it in the vampire's wing made me wonder how many I had missed out on. We were the first people there, which added to my annoyance. I had the opportunity to have a shower. I narrow my eyes at Jack, whilst shuffling away from him. Just because guys stink doesn't mean we should. And Jack, being the weird man species that he is, only proceeds to laugh and pull me closer to him. I sigh, suddenly tired from everything that was going on. All the things that didn't add up, that pixie, the hex and the sudden drowning. Why my dreams were getting really weird of late. What was happening to me? Is this what insanity feels like? A small cough brings me out of my reverie and I look up to see everyone's arrived. Jack brushes past me, sending me a reassuring smile whilst he walks to the middle of the congregation that popped out of nowhere. I smile back as encouragingly as possible, letting him know that I'm okay and wanted him not to worry. Oh, the many talents of a smile. Who needs talking when you could just smile out whatever you wanted to say? Brain, now is not the time to invent a new language. Or ever, really. I know we're made some progress over the last few days, but as ever it's nowhere near enough to actually facilitate an escape of this magnitude. You've been doing a great job so far, but I think it's time we stopped working in the shadows. We have 6 days left. We don't have the time to dally. We have nothing to lose now. I must have been out for longer than I thought. The lack of progress being made was sad, as even though I was making no progress, I had assumed everyone else was doing well. Anna, now that you're awake, I need you to show the techs around every inch of every wing, which you have the best knowledge of. Then I want you to talk to Warren about yesterday and the spikes in magic usage. Yesterday night, 3 new ships came in and 1 left. We're not sure what they contain and why 1 left, but we're attempting to hack into the guard's mainframe to find out, which is proving more difficult than normal. But we're trying a new tactic tomorrow, Damon states, gravely running his hand through his hair. I can see the effect this is having on him, and as I look around, everyone is wearing similar expressions. It was painfully obvious that everyone was fighting an uphill battle whilst a tornado was raging in their midst. Granted, some of the people here weren't complete angels, but we were still prisoners and had a right to do what we wanted in life and freedom. Be it join the army or not, for me, that didn't mean so much. The average lifespan of a human was next to nothing in comparison to that of a werewolf, vampire or demon. For them it was one life sentence into another. The meeting concluded with nothing new to report. No progress being made and everyone's spirits low. I trudge out of there dismayed, Jack walking by my side in silence. I walk to my room while Jack goes wherever to sort it out his stuff. I shower and change into my sweats. Should I wait for Jack? Is he going to come back? Who knows? This was Jack we were talking about. Just as I'm contemplating going to sleep, Jack and Warren enter carrying food. You haven't eaten, Jack states, handing me the food and sitting beside me. We noticed a spike of magic round about the time you, well, whatever happened to you, happened. It was a very large spike too, which shows that the events are both related. A very powerful person is doing this. That's the only explanation, as it takes more than enough energy to get the magic through 𝐊𝐢𝐳 barriers in the first place, let alone make the spell powerful enough to take effect. Do you mind telling us what happened to you? Warren asks, ending his speech. I know by the look on Jack's face that I had no choice in the matter, his current expression resembling that of a brewing storm. I went to clear my head in the meadow because all this prophecy stuff was bogging me down. When I was there, I ended up falling asleep. I had a dream, but I don't really remember it, and then the next thing you know, I was drowning, and as much as I tried to escape, to keep afloat, I couldn't. I just drained of energy and couldn't keep up against the water. I might have something to protect you against it, or I'll ask the others. I think Vlad might just be wary, okay? I don't what or who we're up against yet, but we'll keep our eyes peeled." With those words of encouragement, he nods at Jack and leaves Jack. It's not fair to them to do this to. What's not fair is watching shit happen to your girlfriend and not being able to do damn thing about it. I hate seeing you hurt like this. There's always something going on, either it's those dreams or it's these what? Jack. I cut him off mid-rant by sitting on his lap and hugging him. I get that you want to protect me, but we don't even know what's going on. Let these guys focus on getting off this planet and maybe we'll figure it out. Maybe I get all this because this planet's cursed. The curse doesn't exist and you know it, he growls. We'll just have to find out then, don't we? I challenged TR-15 the next day. I had to giving the techs a walking tour of the entire prison, which took way longer than it normally would on account of their need to digitally mapping every inch. Running tests on pressure points, wall density, weakness and infrastructure, and probably a few dozen other things that I never even knew existed. I mused on my white lie to Jack yesterday. I'm not even entirely sure that it was a white lie. Or even a lie. I think it's a legend. Or at least is one form of the legend. I'm pretty sure it was told before children went to bed. What were they called again? Fairy tales, fables? I don't know, for Earth kids I mean. Like, if you don't behave I'll send you to 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐬. Only here. As we were already on 𝐊𝐲𝐬, they used to tell us that there was a curse against naughty kids. Well, they only ever really told me that as I'm the youngest. I'm not even sure why I said that to Jack. It was mainly as I didn't want him to be even more worried than he already was. Especially about something we didn't know anything about. I suppose the new development in my life could be a manifestation of my dreams, but as much as my dreams hurt, they had never hurt me. I sigh. Life was so complicated and I didn't see it getting any easier for a while. I reached the vampire wing treading on my tiptoes. Thanks to the techs, they had a rather rude awakening earlier, which I didn't want to subject them to again. I stealthily made my way to Vlad's private library, which I knew vaguely how to get to. Not very reassuring, I know. Plus I'm quite certain that the plan involves walking through his bedroom. Or did it just mean it was right next to his bedroom? Either way, I stood outside his room deliberating. Could be this door to the right. Or it could be the door in front of me, which was most definitely his bedroom. Truthfully, I was kind of scared that I would see things that I didn't want to see. He once told me I would never want to come to his room when he was sleeping. Maybe because he was slept naked or whatever. But right now that was the cause of me reluctance. In order to preserve my eyes, I'm going to try the door to the right first and only use his room as a last resort. I push the door open slowly, fumbling for a light switch only to be hit by a small object. I pull on the string, shutting my eyes to protect them from the piercing light. Moments later, I am greeted with the welcome sight of books all around me. Books, glorious books, something something something. Thank goodness for libraries. Or so I think the song goes. There was definitely something special about libraries. It wasn't a physical aspect that I could point out to you. It was just the way they made you feel. Each had a different feeling, but each achieved it in different ways. For example, this particular library made me feel comforted, as if I was being hugged by the books. And in a different library I might feel differently. One of the best feelings ever. I look at the various tomes around me. They looked amazingly beautiful, bound in leather in all the colors and sizes you could imagine. I pick one at random, open it to any page and inhale. It still had that new book smell. Despite the probability that it was older than me. I wasn't even sure what all these books were about, but I'm pretty sure there should be a few about legends here. Scanning the shelves closest to me, I inched my way around the room, but oddly enough each step I would take felt weird. I felt weird. It was as if my body was turning into lead, and I physically couldn't move forward as much as I wanted to. Lifting my head, I continued scanning the spines to see if anything could help me. I was finding it so difficult to keep my eyes open, never mind any other part of my body. Hold on. Real-life legends, the stories based on amazing people. That looks promising. Reaching out for the book was the biggest struggle. I felt like I'm moving in slow-mo. Scratch that, slow-mo was probably faster than me right now. Just as I'm about to pull the book down, I froze. My muscles no longer felt like they were my own. Fear pulsed through me. This couldn't be happening. I couldn't be losing my ability to move, no way. By sheer force of will, I managed to knock the book off the shelf, which depletes my energy completely. I crumbled to the floor, consciousness slipping away from me as even breathing seems like too much of a burden. I slowly come round, my back aching. After opening my eyes only for them to get assaulted by the bright light, I try to make myself relax by doing some deep breathing. I lift my hand, finding that while it wasn't as difficult as it was before, getting up from this awkward position would definitely not be a walk in the park. I crack open my eyes again and allow them to adjust them to the light, then roll to the side so that I'm flat on my back, which only makes the task in hand harder, doesn't it? I'm not sure slow is the best way to do this. If I can just summon one big burst of energy from someplace deep down in my body, I can hoist myself up and use the shelves as grappling hooks. A bit like toddlers when they're first learning to walk. 1, 2, 3. I pull my torso up first, using my arms to grip onto the shelves as I use them to support my weight so I can pull my legs upright too. Only as this is my life we're talking about here. Things did not work out as smoothly as I had planned. I managed to pull my torso up, sure, but putting my weight onto the shelf had been a good idea had it been executed properly. I slipped, my dead weight body proving too much for me to lift, and ended up leaning on the books instead, which proceeded to then tumble in my face. With a thud that did nothing to help my sore body, I land on the floor again and let out a guttural groan. I didn't want this, I so didn't want this. Why wasn't life easy for Nope? You're not going there, not today, not ever. Break up this pity party right now. This is my life, and what does it matter if fate was throwing me a few curveballs? Or rather loads of curveballs, which did weird things to you, like make you feel like you're downing, or suck you into this pseudo world with a pseudo family that kind of wants you to kill yourself, or traps you in a room where not helping at all. Okay, admittedly my life was pretty stressful right now, with the amount of anomalies occurring in it that were too damn frequent and freaky to be a coincidence. It seemed like every time I tried to learn something about the prophecy I was roadblocked. Who is it that didn't want me to know about the prophecy? I have no idea. It couldn't be anyone on 𝐊𝐲𝐷, since we needed to know what the prophecy was in order to get off this planet. I sigh, feeling the weight of all the people's lives on my shoulder. This was irrational, but I felt like they were my responsibility. As my family, as the people who I've grown up with, I want to do everything I can to protect them, and this just feels like a truckload of failure. I sigh again. I don't want to waste everyone's time with conspiracy theories. While I know all my little incidents were too much to be classed as a coincidence, I didn't want this to be the main focus. There were so many kinks to iron out in our plan to escape that this just seems too minor in comparison. What if we didn't actually need the prophecy? It might be totally unrelated to escaping. It might be about who I'm supposed to marry, or how to fix the stupid gene in humans, or how to stop different races hating each other. It might be the key to immortality, or it might not even be about me. I've wasted so much of my energy on this prophecy when really, instead of things getting easier, instead of finding answers, there was more obscurity, more confusion, and worst of all, more danger. It would be safe to say that for now, the search for the prophecy would be put on hold. Not forever, but just until I could figure out the relevance and I wasn't getting into so much danger. I lift myself off the floor, in a pace that was faster than a tortoise's and slower than a snail's. Even if I did feel myself age physically while doing so, good things in life took time. Like getting off the floor after your body decides to fail you. Like it does more frequently than I'd like it to. Thanks, body. I grasped the book while getting up, as I know my luck only too well. I'd probably free fall again, which is one thing my body doesn't need, nor does it want. I walk, or rather hobble, my way out of the library, having decided that whilst I love libraries, when I pass out and feel so drained blinking was a problem, it was best for me to leave. Just as I reach the door, a wave of dizziness washes over me. Great, I managed a grand total of 3 steps. I stop to take a breather, then push the door open, which in turn makes me dizzy all over again, or maybe it was the lack of energy making me dizzy. Who cares? I want to drop like a stone and stay until I felt revived. As if energy was going to be given to me magically by the forces that be. I was determined, by sheer force of will if nothing else, that I would make it to my bedroom alone. However long it took me, however many stops that meant. I would be weak no longer. The damsel in distress no longer. I could do this. I know I could. Pain was relative, and so was my body's ailments. Mind over matter, if you didn't think about it, couldn't affect you. You have the energy to do this. You can take a few extra steps, you can and you will. I did quite well for myself. I made it halfway through the vampire's wing, then I made like a stone and dropped on the marble floor. making the loudest thud noises as physically possible. If the vampires didn't know I was here already, they certainly did now. I was right as ever. Vlad was there in a flash. I'm so sorry for waking you. Can you just give me a hand up? I tripped. Yeah. On what exactly? He questioned sarcastically, calling my bluff. I'm calling Jack. I can only go as far as the door, otherwise I'd drop you off myself, and no. Save me the shit. Nothing you say will change my decision. With that, he scoops me up and carries me to the door where Jack was already waiting. They exchange a nod. Whilst passing me over like cargo, Jack stays silent as he carries me to my room. He doesn't even look at me. It hurts more than anything I've ever felt. Tears spring to my eyes as I desperately try to blink them back. A quick glance at his face shows what I know to be true. I squeeze my eyes shut, not wanting to be here. Anywhere but here, I knew. Just by looking at the harsh angles his face was set in, that as of right now, I wouldn't be allowed to do anything to help escape.